Now, right in line with the scientific method comes logic fallacies, and these were originally talked about by Aristotle. And there's ancient texts that you can look at about this. And essentially, it's using a trick or an illusion or a false reasoning to try and win an argument by avoiding actually arguing the direct points that you're discussing. And there are several examples of logic fallacies that both Judy and I have been subject to when we've been discussing this with other people, such as ad hominem, and I gave some examples. Oh, he's controlled opposition. He just wants to make money from you, or he's a Freemason, all of these kind of things. And these things may, in fact, be true of a person, but if they're making a valid point about a scientific opinion, it really doesn't matter. Even if they're, a serial murderer, their point can still be valid. You may not want to have lunch with them to talk about it, but you should still pay attention to the argument. The second would be an appeal to authority. And so many people have said that I'm not a virologist. Some people even said I'm not even a doctor. But of course, you could also use this to justify opinions. Well, it must be true because the CDC director reported it, or 100 years of medical experts couldn't be wrong, when we find that throughout history, the scientists and experts were often wrong and proven so over time, when there were paradigm shifts. You have the straw man fallacy, which is a very common one. And this is what I was faced with when I testified on the Corona committee. So if viruses aren't real, how do you explain herpes, or how do you explain rabies? And, it's a separate question, because if I can't explain it, it doesn't mean that viruses cause it. Otherwise, I could easily make the claim that, Martians caused the disease, or garden gnomes caused the disease, and you couldn't, have an alternate explanation, so it must be true. And then lastly, the burden of proof fallacy, which is related. And this goes with whoever makes a claim about something has the burden of proof. So if you have a scientific theory like germ theory, for example, then it's your responsibility to provide the evidence. And I can refute the evidence, because any theory, according to the philosophy of silence, has to be falsifiable. So you have to be able to make an argument against it, and then you can do an experiment to disprove it. And if you're unable to disprove it, then it stands. And that's really how science moves forward.